She thought she was walking away from a struggling lover, but he was the heir to an empire. And now the tables have turned. Now caught between a man she fears she hurt and a man who never truly loved her, Jade is about to discover that sometimes love doesn't ask for permission. The sun had long since dipped behind the Lagos skyline, casting golden shadows across the plush lounge of the Grand Orchid Hotel, a place where secrets often bloomed beneath chandeliers and business whispered over crystal glasses. The kind of place Bruce Morgan never felt comfortable in, but tonight he didn't care. He had a ring in his pocket and forever on his mind. Bruce checked his watch again, 7:47 p.m. Jade was late, but that wasn't unusual. She had a flair for lateness, for making grand entrances in flowing silk dresses and smiles that could melt Lagos traffic. He smiled to himself. He had rehearsed it all, the surprise dinner, the speech, the moment he'd go down on one knee. He might not have wealth, not yet, but what he had was real. Honest, built with his two hands. Then he saw her. Jade. She walked in like a queen returning from conquest, gliding across the marble floor in a wine-red gown, her curls tumbling past her shoulders, a Gucci clutch hanging from one hand. Her lips were painted the color of defiance, and her eyes, they held something unreadable, something cold. Bruce stood up. "Hey, babe. She held up her hand, silencing him like a schoolboy. "No need for the theatrics, Bruce," she said, sliding into her seat like it was a throne. "I came because I didn't want to block your number without saying goodbye." Bruce blinked. "What are you talking about?" Jade gave a long sigh and reached into her clutch, pulling out a slim envelope. She pushed it across the table. He didn't touch it. "I've met someone else," she said. Her voice was syrupy, sweetened with practiced cruelty. "His name is Dexter. He's more aligned with the life I want, the life I deserve." Bruce sat frozen, heart thudding. "You said we were building together," he managed, eyes locked on hers. "I told you it was going to take time." "And I've waited long enough," she interrupted. "You talk about dreams while other men buy homes, fly to Zanzibar for lunch, and don't need to check their bank apps before tipping waiters." Her words weren't knives, they were scalpels. Precise, deliberate, designed to cut deep. Then came the final blow. She pulled out her wallet and dropped a wad of cash on the table. "I hope this helps your dream," she said. The room blurred around Bruce. His throat dried. He opened his mouth, but no words came. "Don't call me," Jade added as she stood. "We're not from the same world, Bruce. I was just playing charity." And with that, she walked away, leaving him in the center of the can. Her driver opened the door, but she didn't move. She looked back toward the restaurant window. Her heart was breaking too. But she couldn't let him see it. Because she knew something Bruce didn't. Her mother was dying, and she couldn't bear to drag him into the financial ruin her family was facing. So she lied, pretended, tore him apart so he would never follow her into that darkness. Inside the car, she finally cried, but only when no one could hear. Later that night, Bruce sat alone in his one-bedroom apartment. The ring lay on the kitchen table like a forgotten relic. The money Jade threw at him was still in his coat pocket. He didn't touch it. Instead, he stared at the wall and whispered to himself over and over, "She never loved me." But that was a lie. And in that moment, something inside him changed. He stood up, walked to the mirror, and said aloud, "From now on, I build for myself." Morgan Estate, hidden behind tall bougainvillea walls and bronze gates, was the ancestral home of the Morgan dynasty. A family old money didn't just recognize, it respected. There, in a mahogany-paneled study that smelled of aged books and cigar smoke, Chief Odogwu Morgan, Bruce's grandfather, read a folded newspaper through gold-rimmed glasses. He didn't look up when Bruce entered. He didn't need to. "You look like a man who just realized diamonds don't always shine in daylight," the old man said. Bruce said nothing. He hadn't seen his grandfather in over a year, not since he left the estate to make it on his own, determined to carve a future without leaning on the family name. Chief Morgan closed the newspaper. "She left you?" Bruce exhaled. She didn't just leave. She made sure I stayed beneath her shoe when she did. The old man grunted. Good. Bruce blinked. Excuse me? I said good. Now you know what the world tastes like before money coats it. He stood, adjusting his agbada. His voice grew quieter, more serious. You've spent the last year pretending to be a common man. You wanted struggle. You got it. But now the time has come to stop playing poor. Bruce's brow furrowed. What are you saying? Chief Morgan opened a drawer and slid a leather folder across the table. Your name is on the board of Morgan Capital Group, effective immediately. You'll start at the top, but only if you act like a Morgan. Bruce stared at the file, stunned. Why now? The old lion smiled. Because heartbreak is the best kind of hunger. And you, my boy, are starving. 2 years later, the lobby of Morgan Capital headquarters gleamed like a palace. Marble floors, glass elevators, and a chandelier imported from Italy all whispered the same truth. Power lived here. And now Bruce Morgan owned it. He stepped out of a private elevator in a charcoal suit tailored to perfection. His presence was cool, commanding, and unmistakably changed. No longer the warm, hopeful man who once dreamed over small meals with a girl who didn't believe in him. This Bruce didn't chase love. He commanded loyalty. The office staff straightened when he passed. Interns scrambled to open doors. Secretaries held their breath when he spoke. But beneath the designer shoes and clipped tone, Bruce still carried the wound she left. He just learned how to walk without limping. 1 month later, job interview at Morgan Capital. Jade adjusted her second-hand blazer and tried to steady her breath. She had applied for dozens of jobs. This was her last hope. She had no idea who owned the company now. The name Morgan sounded familiar, but it was just another building in a city full of corporate towers. She stepped into the lobby, CV in hand, her heels echoing against the marble. And just as she reached the reception desk, a voice behind her, cold, deep, familiar. What are you doing here? Jade froze. She turned slowly and saw him, Bruce Morgan, but not the man she left behind. The man who stood before her now had a presence that made her knees weak. A suit that looked like it cost more than her rent, and eyes so unreadable they sent chills down her spine. She stammered, I have an interview. Bruce's lips curled into the faintest smile. Of course you do. And then he turned and walked away, his footsteps calm, cruel, and unforgettable. The past had returned, but this time he was the one in power. The air inside the boardroom felt like glass, clean, cold, and on the verge of shattering. Jade sat across from Mrs. Olaya, the HR director at Morgan Capital, pretending to fill out forms with steady hands. But her mind wasn't in the paperwork, it was upstairs, with Bruce. She hadn't known he'd become this. A CEO, a powerhouse, an untouchable name now whispered in corporate circles from Lagos to Nairobi. The man she'd once left with a handful of cash and a broken spirit had returned in tailored vengeance. And now she was about to work for him. Miss Jade Bello? Mrs. Olaya's voice brought her back. Yes, ma'am. You're hired as a communications executive. You'll be reporting directly to the CEO. Jade's fingers twitched. Directly? She echoed. The HR woman gave her a polite smile. Yes, Mr. Bruce Morgan personally approved your file. Jade's stomach sank. So he wanted this. Later that day, Bruce's office. The elevator opened to the top floor, where silence wrapped around wealth like a velvet robe. Jade stepped out, trying not to tremble. The receptionist motioned to the oak door at the end of the hallway. She knocked gently. Enter. She pushed the door open and stepped in. It was a cathedral of glass and mahogany. At the center sat Bruce, pen in hand, suit flawless, eyes unreadable. She stood by the door, waiting for him to speak. He didn't. The silence stretched. When he finally looked up, his eyes held no welcome. Just calculation. So, he said slowly, you applied for a job. How ambitious of you. Jade swallowed. I didn't know it was your company. Would you have applied if you had? No. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Then it's a good thing fate doesn't ask for permission. The pause between them buzzed with electricity. Have a seat, he said flatly. She did, trying not to squirm under his gaze. Bruce continued, his tone controlled. "You'll be working under my directives. Professionalism is expected. Punctuality non-negotiable. And I suggest you leave your emotions at the door." Jade met his eyes. "I can be professional, Bruce." "It's Mr. Morgan in this building," he corrected sharply. She flinched ever so slightly. "Of course," she whispered. That evening, Dexter's apartment. The sun dipped over Lecky as Dexter stirred a pot of egusi soup. The small apartment smelled of hope and exhaustion. Jade sat at the dining table, face pale and tired. "How was the interview?" Dexter asked, placing a steaming bowl in front of her. She didn't answer immediately. "It's his company," she said finally. Dexter's spoon paused mid-air. "Bruce?" She nodded. Dexter forced a smile. "Well, at least it's a good company. They pay well. That's what matters, right?" Jade nodded without conviction. He watched her. "You still think about him, don't you?" "I think about what I did," she replied quietly. "Every day." Dexter leaned back. "Jade, I know I said I'd wait, that I'd be here until you see me the way I see you." She looked up sharply. "But I can't pretend it doesn't hurt," he added, voice low. "Watching you suffer in silence, still carrying guilt for a man who won't even say your name." Jade reached across the table and touched his hand. "You're my best friend, Dexter," she said softly. "But I told you from the beginning. My heart's not ready. I don't know if it ever will be." He nodded, eyes damp. "Then I'll keep waiting. Just don't break mine, too." Meanwhile, Bruce's penthouse. Bruce stood on his balcony, overlooking the city he now conquered. In his hand was a glass of whiskey. On his desk behind him lay a stack of signed contracts and a photograph half hidden beneath it. One of him and Jade, back when life was simpler and love was enough. He didn't hate her. Not really. But he couldn't forget. Couldn't forget the sting of being left like trash. Couldn't forget the weight of that cash on the restaurant table. She was under his roof now, working beneath his name, and whether she knew it or not. "This time," Bruce muttered, "I hold the cards." The first week at Morgan Capital passed like a silent war. Jade walked on eggshells, determined to stay invisible. Her reports were flawless, her emails precise. She kept her head down and her eyes off the man in the corner office, the man she once promised forever, the one who now barely looked at her. But Bruce looked. Oh, he looked. Every time she walked into a room, his chest tightened. Her voice in meetings haunted him like an old melody. He couldn't escape her presence, nor the phantom pain of what they once had. He'd brought her here for one reason: revenge. But he hadn't prepared for how much it would hurt to see her again, alive, radiant, still too beautiful to hate. Friday, late evening. Everyone else had gone home. Jade was the last on the floor, finishing a campaign strategy Bruce had demanded at the last minute. It was the third time that week. She suspected it was deliberate, but said nothing. She stood outside his office now, report in hand, her heart thudding as she knocked softly. "Come in." She entered. Bruce stood at the window, back to her, city lights painting gold across his shoulders. "I have the report," she said. He turned slowly. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, they burned. He walked toward her, took the file, flipped it open, but didn't read a word. Silence. "I did what you asked," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Bruce's hand snapped the folder shut. "You always do what you're asked, don't you?" he said coldly, "until someone richer asks you for more." Her breath caught. "Bruce, I said it's Mr. Morgan," he snapped. His voice cracked like thunder across the room. Jade's eyes narrowed, her own fire rising. "You can insult me all you want, but I didn't come here for this. I came here to work." He stepped closer. "Work? That's funny. Because every time I see you walk into my building, I remember how you left me, how you paid me to forget you." She swallowed, blinking fast. "Bruce, please. You think you can come back and pretend it didn't happen?" His voice shook now, with anger and something else. "You think I've forgotten how you looked at me like I was nothing?" Her silence was answer enough. Then, without warning, without permission, he grabbed her by the wrist and pulled her to him. Their faces inches apart. "I hate you for what you did," he whispered, his breath warm and ragged. But God help me. I still want you." And then he kissed her, not gentle, not sweet, hungry, angry, desperate. Jade gasped, pushed at his chest, but he didn't let go. Not until she broke free, her eyes wide with betrayal and pain. She slapped him, hard. "You don't get to touch me like that," she shouted, backing away. He stood there, chest heaving, tears brimmed in her eyes. "I'm not yours anymore," she whispered. "I was never yours, remember?" She turned and ran from the office, her phone slipping from her purse, falling to the floor unnoticed. Bruce stared at the closed door. Then, her phone rang. He picked it up. The screen lit up. Dexter calling, his jaw clenched. Without thinking, he answered. "Hello." Dexter's voice came through, concerned. "Jade, are you okay?" Bruce said nothing at first, then cool and measured. "She can't talk right now." Dexter's voice sharpened. "Who is this?" "Bruce Morgan, her boss." Silence. Then Bruce added, each word slow and venom-laced, "Do yourself a favor, Dexter. Stay away from her. She's not yours, she never was." And he ended the call. An hour later, the door burst open. Jade stormed in, eyes wild. "Where's my phone?" Bruce, now sitting calmly at his desk, raised an eyebrow. "You left it," he said, careless. She snatched it from the table and saw the call log. Her head snapped up. "You answered my call." "I did." "You had no right," Bruce stood. "And your boyfriend had no business calling you while you're working in my building." "He's not my boyfriend," she spat. "Oh?" His voice dropped, almost mocking. "Could have fooled me. You don't get to dictate who I talk to. This is my life, Bruce." That name again. It burned. In a flash, he stepped forward, grabbing her wrist. Not hard, but firm. "You don't know what you're doing to me," he said through clenched teeth. "You walk in here every day like you didn't break me. Like I'm just some phase you grew out of." "And what do you want from me now?" she demanded. "To suffer. To pay for a mistake I made when I was drowning." He didn't answer, because the door flew open. Dexter. He didn't pause to greet anyone. He walked straight to Jade, gently pulled her free from Bruce's grasp, and stood between them like a shield. "Let's go," he said softly but firmly. Bruce's jaw tightened. "So the night finally shows up." Dexter didn't look back. "She said she's not yours. Respect that." And with that, he led her out, leaving Bruce alone with nothing but the scent of her perfume and a war raging in his chest. The office felt colder on Monday. Jade arrived in silence, dressed in cream chiffon and quiet resolve. But the echo of Friday's chaos still pulsed beneath her skin. The kiss, the slap, Bruce's furious grip, and then Dexter's unexpected rescue. She hadn't spoken to either of them since, and as she took her seat near the boardroom, she could feel it. Bruce watching her from behind the glass walls. Always watching. Later that day, outside Bruce's office. Bruce hadn't called her in all morning. It was strange. Usually he looked for ways to summon her, criticize her, test her patience. But today, nothing. Until the elevator dinged. The receptionist stood suddenly. "Mr. Morgan has a visitor." Jade barely glanced up until she heard the heels, and then she saw her, tall, elegant. Lipstick like blood, designer bag in one hand, car keys in the other. She didn't walk. She arrived, the kind of woman who didn't have to announce her importance because her presence screamed it. "Hi," the woman said sweetly. "I'm here for Bruce. I'm his fiancée." Jade's world tilted. The word hit her like a gust of cold wind. Fiancé? Before she could recover, the door to Bruce's office swung open. And there he was, smiling. Smiling. A smile Jade hadn't seen since before everything. "Vanessa," he said warmly, stepping out to greet her. She kissed him on the cheek, casually, familiarly. "I was in the neighborhood, thought I'd surprise you." And then she turned to Jade. "Oh," Vanessa said lightly, "you must be his assistant." Jade blinked. I'm on the communications team." Bruce's eyes flickered to her for half a second, just enough to show he noticed the strain in her voice, just enough to enjoy it. "Jade's just joined us," he said casually. "We go way back." Vanessa raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Is that so?" Jade smiled thinly. Not that far back. She stepped away quickly, heart in her throat. In the restroom. Moments later, Jade stared into the mirror. Fiancé. He had a fiancé. The word played over and over in her mind like a cruel song. She gripped the sink, steadying herself, refusing to cry, but her reflection wouldn't lie. She still loved him. Even after everything, even after how he treated her. That night, Dexter's apartment. Dexter poured her a glass of juice and sat beside her on the couch, silent. He didn't need to ask what happened. Her eyes told the story. Did something happen at work? He asked gently. She hesitated. His fiancée came today. Dexter paused, the air tightening between them. Fiancé? She nodded. Tall, elegant, the perfect corporate match, she said bitterly. Dexter said nothing. He only reached out and took her hand. Then he's a fool, he said quietly. And I hope she breaks his heart worse than you broke mine. Jade pulled her hand back, wounded. Dex. I'm sorry, he said, softening. I didn't mean it like that. I hate seeing you hurt. I'd do anything to take your pain away. She looked away. Even if it means losing me completely. Dexter swallowed hard. If it meant you'd be happy. Yes. The next day, Bruce's office. Vanessa was gone, but the damage remained. Bruce sat in his office, staring at Jade through the glass as she moved with robotic grace. She hadn't looked at him once since yesterday. He didn't know why it bothered him so much. He should have been satisfied. He should have felt powerful. Instead, he felt nothing. No, worse than nothing. He felt regret. And it made him angry. He buzzed his intercom. Jade, my office, now. She entered a moment later, face guarded, posture stiff. You needed me? She asked. He leaned back in his chair. You've been quiet. I didn't know silence was a performance issue. He smirked. So you're upset? She looked him in the eye. Number, I'm indifferent. That word, it sliced him open. Is that what you were when you walked out on me? He shot back. Indifferent? I was surviving, she snapped. Something you wouldn't understand. He stood suddenly, furious. You think you're the only one who suffered? You destroyed me, Jade. You left me like I was worthless. And yet you moved on. You're engaged. He didn't reply, because he couldn't. He didn't love Vanessa. He never had. She was a facade, a social expectation, a business alignment, a distraction. Not Jade, never Jade. I still feel everything, he said suddenly. Everything I felt when I first met you. Every damn emotion. You didn't kill it. Her breath caught. Bruce. And just like before, he moved fast. 1 step, 2. He grabbed her face and kissed her again, but this time it was different. Not just angry, desperate, like he needed to prove something to himself. Jade pushed him hard, shoving him back. You don't get to do this, she screamed. She turned, yanked the door open and left, but the truth was clear. He was losing her, and it was killing him. The air in Morgan Capital had grown electric, sharp with tension, simmering with unspoken desires and hidden agendas. Vanessa wasn't stupid. She had seen the look in Bruce's eyes, not when he looked at her, when he looked at Jade, and she knew what it meant. Danger. Jade wasn't just a random girl from the past, she was the threat to her future, to her marriage, her social status, her hold on the Morgan empire. But Vanessa didn't rage, she planned. And it didn't take long to find Jade's weakness. Cashew allergy, 1 whispered conversation with the catering manager, 1 fake lunch delivery from a client meeting, 1 carefully planted lie. And then she waited. The jealousy. Bruce tried to stay away. He tried to bury himself in work, in Vanessa's curated perfection, in cold logic. But nothing helped. Every time Dexter touched Jade's arm, Bruce burned. Every time he saw her laugh at something Dexter said, he clenched his fist. It wasn't just jealousy, it was possession. Jade wasn't his anymore, but no one else could have her either, not without consequences. It started slowly. A quiet lunch in the break room. Dexter had just dropped by, handing her a takeout package he said was sent from the corporate partners meeting. The receptionist confirmed it had Bruce's name on it. She opened it, grateful, and began to eat. It tasted strange. Within minutes, her throat tightened. Her skin began to itch. Her vision blurred. She stood up, panicked. I can't breathe. Then everything went black. The hospital room. Beeping machines. White sheets. Dexter was pacing, frantic. Bruce stood in the corner, hands in his pockets, hiding the storm beneath his cold exterior. The doctor emerged. She had a severe allergic reaction. If she'd come any later. Bruce nearly crumpled. "Who gave her the food?" Dexter asked sharply. "I thought it came from your end," Bruce said stiffly. "Number I didn't order anything. She said it came from you." Both men turned, confused but none suspected Vanessa. 3 days later, Jade returned to the office, pale, weak, but defiant. She walked into Bruce's office and dropped a resignation letter on his desk. "I'm done," she said. "Find someone else to humiliate." But Bruce didn't even look at it. He slid a document across the desk instead. "What's this?" "Your employment agreement." She flipped through it and froze. "You signed a non-exit clause," he said calmly. "If you resign before a year, you pay 80 million naira in damages." Her hands trembled. "I didn't see this," she whispered. "You didn't read it," he corrected. "You were desperate when you signed. You needed the job." Tears filled her eyes. "You tricked me." Bruce stood and stepped closer. "No," he said softly. "I bound you. You don't get to walk out again." She slapped the document against his chest and turned to leave, but he caught her arm. "I didn't know about the food," he said, quieter now, "but if I find out who did it..." "You'll do nothing," she said bitterly, "because you're the poison in my life, Bruce." He let her go, but as she stormed out, he whispered to himself, "No, Jade, I'm the antidote. You just don't see it yet." The night was thick with silence, so calm, so unnervingly still that even the trees outside the Morgan Capitol building stood frozen. But death was moving. A figure crept in the dark shadows across from Jade's apartment. Gloved hands, steady aim, cold eyes, one shot, a scream. Then footsteps disappeared into the wind. The hit Jade collapsed at the door of her apartment, blood staining the side of her blouse. The world spun in cruel circles, shouting neighbors, sirens wailing, the floor going cold beneath her. She didn't know who shot her or why. All she remembered was the pain, and Dexter's voice screaming her name. The hospital. The doctors fought to stabilize her. The bullet had missed her organs but caused massive blood loss. "She needs a transfusion now," a nurse shouted. They checked the records. There was only one perfect match in the system, and he was already standing at the hospital entrance, frantic and pale. Bruce Morgan. Without hesitation, he offered his arm. "Take it," he said. "Just don't let her die." He refused a stretcher. He sat upright while the transfusion was done. But halfway through, the world around him dimmed. Then, darkness. The awakening. When Bruce opened his eyes, it wasn't Jade he saw. It was Vanessa, perched beside his bed like a porcelain angel cracked at the edges. "You're awake," she whispered. He blinked. "Where's Jade?" Her smile shattered. "You just fainted, Bruce. You need rest. She's fine." But he had already removed the IV from his hand. He stormed toward Jade's ward, chest burning, only to stop dead at the doorway. Jade was smiling at Dexter. His hand was in hers. Her laugh, the one Bruce used to live for, echoed softly. Bruce stood there like a man gutted from the inside, and then he walked away. Behind him, Vanessa saw everything, and she knew she had already lost him. Unless she destroyed Jade completely. She met with HR Director Mrs. Oho the next morning, her face calm, her tone smooth. "I need her out of the office, a field visit, something far. But Miss Jade is still recovering." "She'll be fine," Vanessa said, cutting her off. "Besides, this client has promised to finalize our Lagos Kano deal only if Jade is present. She needs to go." The trap was set. Jade, though still weak, agreed, eager to earn some money so she could begin paying Dexter back. She packed her bag, ignoring the sting in her side. "I'll be fine," she told herself. She had survived worse. The road twist hours into her trip, the car slowed suddenly. Up ahead, on the side of the expressway, an elderly man had collapsed, his driver nowhere in sight. Without thinking, Jade leapt out. "Sir, can you hear me?" She called. She called the emergency number, dropped to her knees, and began administering CPR, ignoring the pain slicing through her wound. 1 compression. 2. 3. Over and over. Finally, the man gasped. He was alive, but Jade, trembling, bleeding, exhausted, collapsed beside him. The hospital again. She woke up in a soft hospital bed, the scent of antiseptic mixed with something warm, like honey and tea. The old man sat nearby, alive and well, now dressed in simple kaftan robes. His eyes were kind but sharp. "You saved my life, young lady," he said. "I could feel your strength, even through unconsciousness." She tried to smile. "What's your name?" "Jade," she said faintly. "Jade Nwosu." The old man nodded. He waited until she had left the room before turning to his well-dressed bodyguard. "I think we've found a wife for my grandson." The Morgan estate sprawled across acres of Abuja's most exclusive neighborhood. But today, Chief Odogwu Morgan paced his private study like a restless lion. He'd nearly died days ago, but the girl who revived him had etched herself into his heart. She had strength, compassion, fire. She was exactly the kind of woman he wanted for his grandson. "Call Bruce," he said finally to his butler. The summoning. Bruce arrived reluctantly, flanked by the ever-present Vanessa, who was already seated, legs crossed, wineglass in hand. "I've made a decision," Chief Morgan began. "I've found a wife for you." Vanessa choked on her drink. "What do you mean by that?" Bruce asked carefully. "I said," the old man repeated, "I've found you a wife." "Not this." He gestured at Vanessa with open distaste. "Vain mannequin who wants your name, but not your burdens." Vanessa turned red. Bruce stiffened. "I already have a fiancée." "Then unfiancé her," the old man barked. "The woman I met saved my life. She has dignity, grace, and most of all, she didn't know I was a billionaire, yet she gave me her blood and sweat." After a long silence, Bruce finally said, "If it means that much to you, I'll marry whoever you choose." He didn't know it yet. But the girl was Jade. His Jade. The setup. That same afternoon, Chief Odogwu decided to call the young woman who had saved him. He dialed Jade's number, and she answered sweetly. "I'm in town," she told him, "here to meet a client at Crown Heights Hotel." As the old man dropped the call, his eyes sharpened. That hotel was Morgan property. He turned to his assistant. "Run a full guest and meeting schedule. Find out who she's going to see." Minutes later, the report came. Don, a shady, manipulative business partner with a known history of scandal. Chief Odogwu paled. "Call Bruce. Now." Don had prepared the suite. Red wine, dim lights, hidden cameras, exactly as him and Vanessa has planned it. He greeted Jade with a devilish smile. Immediately she entered the room and handed her a glass. "To partnerships," he said. She sipped. "Just one." Her eyes narrowed, then widened. Something was wrong. Her knees buckled, her vision blurred. "You drugged me," she whispered, staggering toward the door. Don lunged forward, but she escaped his grip, heels clattering against marble as she ran. The rescue Bruce burst into the hotel, breath shallow. The phone number Chief Odogwu had forwarded. It was Jade's. He knew her voice now, knew that softness anywhere. As he turned a corner, Jade, dazed and wild-eyed, ran straight into him. "Bruce? Jade?" Then Don appeared, right behind her. Bruce's fists moved faster than thought. The first punch broke Don's nose. The second cracked his ribs. Security guards dragged him away as Jade collapsed into Bruce's arms. "I think I'm drunk," she whispered. "Number, you're drugged." And then, still under the influence, she kissed him. Fiercely, desperately, their lips met like thunder crashing against thunder, years of pain, betrayal, want, all in that single moment. Bruce carried her to the nearest private suite. They didn't speak. They made love like a storm, tangled, messy, and unforgettable. The morning sunlight filtered through the cream curtains. Jade's lashes fluttered open. A strong, warm arm was draped over her waist. She sat up and screamed. Chief Odogwu Morgan stood at the door, smiling. "Good morning, my children." "Chief," Jade gasped, "you're Bruce's grandfather?" "Indeed," he said, settling into the leather armchair across from them. And what a glorious twist of fate. They dressed quickly and joined him downstairs. "I want you two to marry," he said firmly. "Today, if possible." Jade opened her mouth, closed it, then found her voice. "No, Chief, I can't. I can't marry someone out of guilt. I'm not asking," Bruce interrupted. He stood up, voice ironclad. "I'm telling you, Jade, you're going to marry me, whether you want to or not." She glared at him, fire burning in her wounded eyes. "Bruce, you don't own me. But I can't lose you again." He stormed out of the room and called his assistant immediately. "Dig into Jade Nwosu's history," he commanded, "everything, from the day she left me until now." The Morgan residence was quiet, but Bruce's heart was thunder. He paced his study like a man tormented, the envelope from his private investigator still unopened on his desk. The night with Jade had awakened everything he had buried. Love, anger, longing, confusion. And now this file might hold the answers to the question that had haunted him for years. Why did she leave? With trembling fingers, he slit open the seal and pulled out the documents. The report, page after page, picture after picture. Jade's life unfolded like a brutal film reel. He saw hospital records, her mother's name repeatedly admitted and discharged. The diagnosis, inconclusive. The treatments, erratic. And always, Dexter's signature somewhere in the records, authorizing payments, making medical suggestions, intervening. Bruce's lips tightened. Then came the footage from a year ago, CCTV stills, police records, and a confession from a former security guard. A report of an attempted rape in Jade's former neighborhood. One of the attackers had died during the scuffle, the other vanished. Jade had been arrested. The man who posted her bail. Dexter, but the worst part, the most damning part, was the revelation that Dexter had planted the men to attack Jade. All to play the hero. All to make her feel indebted. A low growl escaped Bruce's throat. He slammed the file shut. She left me to protect her mother, and she thought she owed him her life. He rose, eyes burning, hands clenched. Justice served that evening. Bruce strode into the Special Investigations Unit in Abuja, armed with every file, every voice recording, and every confession. By nightfall, both Dexter and Vanessa were in handcuffs. Vanessa screamed and cried, cursing Bruce and calling Jade names. "Mark my words, Bruce. She's not worth it. She's trash." "Shut up," he barked. "The only trash here is you." As they were dragged away, Bruce made one last call. "Move Jade Nwosu's mother to Grand Crest Medical. I'll cover everything. She gets the best care now." Jade rushed to the hospital when she received the call. She ran straight to the private suite where her mother lay. Clean sheets, peaceful breathing, a full team of specialists surrounding her. Bruce stood at the window, hands in his pockets. When she turned and saw him, her heart froze. "I don't understand," she whispered. How did this happen?" "I found out everything," he said softly, without turning around. "Dexter, the hospital, the men who tried to hurt you." Her knees buckled. He caught her. He held her as her body shook with sobs. "I thought I was protecting her," she cried. "I thought he saved me." "He trapped you, Jade. Used your love for your mother. Used your trauma. But it's over now." She buried her face into his chest and sobbed harder. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me, even when I couldn't see myself." Bruce gently tilted her chin upward. Her eyes were swollen, red, but more beautiful than he had ever seen them. "I've waited years to ask you this," he said quietly, "but I won't let another day pass." He pulled out a ring, simple, gold, timeless. "Will you marry me, Jade Nwosu?" She looked at the ring, then at him, then back at the ring. Tears poured freely as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Bruce, with all my heart I will." The air buzzed with electricity as dawn broke over Victoria Island. The Morgan estate was transformed into a paradise, orchids tumbling from ivory columns, gold-trimmed canopies floating above crystal chairs, violins humming beneath the rhythm of traditional talking drums. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a coronation of love that had been crucified, buried, and resurrected. The crème of society was present, captains of industry, politicians, royalty, even celebrities whose names melted headlines. But amidst the glamour, the heartbeat of the day was unmistakably Bruce and Jade. Jade stood before the mirror in her bridal suite, dressed in a custom off-shoulder gown made from silk flown in from Ghana, with hand-stitched beadwork glistening like raindrops on moonlight. Her natural curls were swept into a soft bun, and her makeup was flawless but minimal, letting her glowing skin speak for itself. A soft knock at the door. It was Chief Odogwu Morgan. "My daughter," he said, eyes misty. "Thank you for saving my life, and thank you for saving his." She smiled, and he kissed her forehead before walking her down the aisle to the man who waited like a storm, behind calm eyes. Bruce stood tall in a rich emerald-green agbada embroidered with gold threads that shimmered like royal fire. His heart pounded as he saw her, his Jade, walking toward him like the future he'd prayed for in silence. When she reached him, they didn't speak. They just stared, and in that gaze, apologies were made, forgiveness was sealed, and promises were carved into eternity. The vows. "I don't promise a perfect life," Bruce said, holding her hands before the officiant and the world, "but I promise you a full one. One where you'll never question your worth, one where love, not fear, will be our daily bread." Jade's lips trembled. "And I don't promise to forget the past," she replied, "but I promise to walk forward with you. Not because you saved me, but because you saw me. You loved me enough to wait, fight, bleed, and still choose me." The crowd wept. Chief Odogwu cheered. Vanessa and Dexter were a distant memory, and when the officiant finally declared, "You may now kiss the bride," Bruce kissed her with the kind of hunger that belonged only to a man who had lost, searched, fought, and finally found his soul. The wedding night. The suite at the Morgan Private Resort was draped in white roses, vanilla-scented candles, and silk sheets imported from Cairo. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, revealing a moonlit beach just beyond the balcony. But Bruce didn't notice any of that. All he saw was Jade, standing in the soft light, in nothing but a lace robe that slid down her shoulders like temptation itself. Their eyes locked. He moved to her like a lion stalking its moon. She met him halfway. There were no words, only breath, skin, fire. He lifted her gently, pressing kisses along her collarbone, whispering her name like a vow between each one. She gasped as he carried her to the bed, laying her down like the rarest treasure ever unearthed. "I need to feel you," he whispered. "You already do," she replied, her hands roaming the firm lines of his chest. The robe slipped away, his shirt followed. Their bodies met, not in a rush, but in reverence. Every movement was a prayer, every kiss, an answer, every moan, a language only lovers understand. He worshipped her scars, she claimed his brokenness. They moved in rhythm, slow at first, tender, then faster, deeper, more desperate, as if trying to crawl into each other's souls and never leave. The pleasure was overwhelming, but the emotion was more so, for this was not just lovemaking, it was belonging. It was redemption. And when they finally collapsed into each other's arms, slick with sweat and breathless with joy, Bruce kissed her temple and whispered into the dark, "You were never mine, Jade, but now you'll never stop being." She smiled through her tears and kissed him back. "Forever," she whispered. "This time, forever." The end.